What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another great edition of The Hit. I am Logan Graffia. He is Calvin Rons, and with us today is another special guest, good friend Bob Rose from the Saints News Network. What is up, Bob?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I hope you're doing well. All three of us know we got a busy day ahead of us media-wise.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let's get right into it. Let's go over what we just saw in the preseason game. So the ones looked pretty good. Jameis didn't look bad. He didn't miss a single pass. I was worried after I saw him get tackled and have his legs go underneath him again, but he was fine after that. He looked calm and poised out there, which makes me feel a lot better. And the ones just looked really good. And I want to get your thoughts. With the way the ones performed, does that kind of ease your mind going into the season, Bob?
Yeah, it does. And I really wasn't expecting or didn't want to see the ones in the top tiers players play a whole lot, if any at all. And we saw why when Trevor Penning went down with that freak injury. But I'm not worried about these guys at all. Jameis had worked up some nice chemistry. At least we've seen some nice chemistry between he and those new receivers in practice reps. And that's really what I was most concerned about the offense outside of the offensive line. The safeties. I actually would have liked to see Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu get a little bit more work, with the cornerbacks in front of them. Because if there's an area on this defense that worries me going into the regular season, it's communication and chemistry back in that secondary. I think this has the potential to be the best Saints defensive backfield in franchise history, but I would not be surprised to see some communication breakdowns early in the year. Other than that, like you guys just said, the ones look like they were in mid-season form. You have to be encouraged by what you saw out of those guys if you're a Saints fan.
Well, the one thing that worries me the most, and I've been saying it all off season, and Calvin can vouch for this, is the offensive line, and it actually worries me a lot more now that Penning has gone down, and also Hurst is recovering from an injury as well. That's both your essentially starting left tackles. So I'm curious to see how they fill that role or that spot if both Hurst and Penning. Well, Penning's going to be out indefinitely, but if Hurst can't go week one, my question to you is, who do you think fills that left tackle spot if Hurst can't go?
The coaches really like Landon Young, and we've seen some good things from Young, in his short 2-year tenure in the league. But even if Young is the answer, and everything we've heard from Dennis Allen makes it sound like James Hurst is going to be a full go for Atlanta on September 11th. But like you said, you never know. Even with a healthy Hurst and Young, with Penning out, the depth on this offensive line, particularly at the tackle position, scares the heck out of me. So I fully expect the Saints to scour the waiver wire after the major cuts are all announced on August 30th. Would not be shocked at all. There's still a few intriguing names that are, believe it or not, available in free agency, but I would not be surprised at all if they swung a trade for a couple of the guys that are rumored to be on the trading block with other teams.
Bob brought up a good point, Calvin. The trading block. You and I kind of discussed one of the candidates out there, Isaiah Wynn. Now, Calvin, do you think Saints should go after Isaiah Wynn?
Of course. I mean, no such thing as having too many offensive linemen in my book. You need to have depth, especially in the trenches, D-line and O-line. You got to build the team inside out. That's where a lot of success comes in. And without those guys, nothing is happening on any side of the ball. So I think trading for Isaiah Wynn would be a good move. Here in Leatherwood's also on the radar too, for getting waived. I'll also take a look at him. Just having some veteran guys that can play offensive line will always help. Landon Young, I am also intrigued to see. But like Bob said, I mean, we never know, if Hurst will be ready to go or not. But even if he is, I mean, we do need more depth. Depth is a thing that's going to win us games. When you talk about November and all that, my pops always told me the game is a war of attrition.
Mm-hmm.
The healthiest team is the team that's going to win. So having as much depth as possible at every position is always a good move, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, I've always told you that a quarterback can't succeed in this league without a great offensive line. Now, Joe Burrow is the exception because he brought a horrible offensive line to the Super Bowl. We all saw that, but not everyone is Joe Burrow. And now, a question I'm going to just ask both of you. I want to get both of your opinions on this. If Hurst can't go, do you see a world or a scenario where Pete kicks back out the left tackle where that was his originally drafted position and someone like Throckmorton fills in at the left guard spot? I'm going to go to Bob first on this.
Yeah, I absolutely can envision that scenario. And again, that scenario would come down to who the Saints prefer at that spot. Do they prefer Pete at the left tackle? While Throckmorton fills in at left guard, and Throck played really well there last year. Or do they like Pete at the left guard and they feel comfortable, with a banged up Hurst or even a second year Landon Young? Any of those scenarios I see plausible. But again, if no matter what of those three scenarios that we just mentioned plays out, depth would still scare the heck out of me. Going back to what you were saying, Calvin, if you target Isaiah Wynn, you're bringing him in to start. So that tells me that either Hurst isn't as close to being healthy as what Dennis Allen has indicated, or they want Hurst to be that sixth lineman, that swing lineman that could play guard or tackle, boom, in a pinch. That's why I can't see a scenario where they bring in Wynn. But again, it's what the Patriots would be asking for him. The asking price is going to be key. I can't see the Saints giving up a high. We all know they don't have a first round draft choice. Can't see them giving up a high day 2 pick, considering their lack of draft picks so far in 2023. But if the Patriots are willing to accept, say, I'm just spitballing here, Daniel Sorensen, who has Patriot player written all over him, Daniel Sorensen and Treycoin Smith, and maybe a conditional day 3 pick for Isaiah Wynn. Yeah, you pull that trigger and you tell James Hurst, look, you're going to be our 6th guy. If Ruiz struggles, you're in. If / Pete gets hurt, you're in. If there's any issues at either tackle spot, you're in. It is a long answer to your question. I can see Pete at the left tackle spot. But no matter who moves out there with Penning out, they have to make a move to bring in somebody with some experience starting, some starting experience.
Calvin, want to piggyback off of that?
Me and you were talking about it on Twitter, I believe, the other day. When I mentioned Throckmorton, I think Throckmorton can hold it down, especially at the guard spot. He is a serviceable player. And the Saints have always had great swing offensive linemen. You remember Senio Kelemete, Will Clapp, those guys always came in and held it down, and no matter what position they had to play, center, guard, tackle, whatever. So sliding Pete over is an interesting prospect. I think about, we might see some funky lineups, where Cesar Reeves might have to go to center. I mean, we have a bunch of guys that can play multiple positions. It's just whether or not the Saints want to do it and where they feel comfortable with doing it. Really the only guy on the offensive line to me that's really an anchor is Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, I'm not moving him anywhere away from that right tackle spot. Unless you want to move him to the left tackle spot, I'm sure he'll be fine. And then you can play with Hurst or whoever at the right tackle spot. But if you pick up a swing offensive lineman, it doesn't have to be Wynn, doesn't have to be Leatherwood, just some guy who can be serviceable in that position. I think, we'll be just fine either way. But the depth for sure does scare me. Like Bob said, either way, there is no way to cut the cake. The depth is just not there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I've been telling you since the offseason started, even after we got pinned, and I said, Calvin, the offensive line is my number one concern. I listed you my 3 concerns, and offensive lineman was my number 1 concern, which actually surprised you. Now, we're into the cut season. We're about to get down to the 53-man roster. Now, Bob, who is this one candidate you think just has to make this 53? Who is this one person that you saw this whole offseason, preseason, everything that just has to make this 53?
As far as guys that you consider on the roster bubble, I'd say Kirk Merritt. Would be at the top of my list on offense. Kirk, to me, he's not only outplayed an established veteran in Treycoin Smith, He's a young developmental guy. He can play special teams. We saw them working him out at running back a little bit last week. So that brings up an intriguing possibility. Are they going to kind of form him into a Ty Montgomery type of player? So I think if they keep 6 wide receivers, and I think they will, Kirk Merritt has got to be that guy, in my opinion, and you got to move on from Treycoin Smith. On defense, the slam dunk player that has to make it for this team is Justin Evans. An under the radar signing by most everybody. When they signed him this offseason, I was telling people, look, wait a minute. I remember watching this kid at A&M, scouting him when he came out of the draft. His first 2 years in Tampa Bay, he was a playmaker. The thing that concerned me was back-to-back Achilles injuries, hadn't been on the field since training camp of 2019. So I was interested to see what kind of range and what kind of speed he still had left. If this preseason is any indication, Justin Evans is not only a roster lock, he's a guy that you can move into nickel and dime packages, and knock on wood, if anything happens to Marcus May or Tyrann Mathieu, he's even a guy that you could plug into the starting lineup. So Justin Evans to me is the slam dunk on defense.
Both would be definitely my choices, and I wanted to say Dejon, but we didn't see a whole lot from him this offseason. But Kirk Merritt absolutely surprised me. I mean, it's always great to see a hometown kid play for the hometown team and absolutely just crush it. Now going to Calvin, kind of piggybacking off of Bob. Now, who are your two? Just give me 2 guys that you just think have to make this 53-man roster. And I know for a fact you're going to cut Treyquan, because I'm all with y'all. You just cut Treyquan, he's gone. So tell me, Calvin.
Yeah, well, Bob really made my answer easy, because we actually have the exact same 2 guys, Kirk Merritt and Justin Evans. Justin Evans, I mean, had forced fumbles in 2 preseason games? I mean, that's production right there. That's extreme production. Turnovers, you win the turnover margin, you're probably going to win the game more times than not. Kirk Merritt, special teams, he's able to play multiple positions apparently. I mean, that just makes his value just skyrocket. I mean, it's kind of like a how can I say? I don't really know. I don't have words for it, but he's kind of like a Tommy Stevens. But that's what I'm trying to say. He's a skilled Tommy Stevens, I guess. He's trying to move around a little bit. Obviously there's Taysom, but he's a nice little experiment, kind of like Tommy Stevens was. Tommy Stevens was on the bubble and they try to move him to different positions. But Kirk Merritt is doing it well, and that's the difference. But if I just had to throw some other name out there, I'd probably say Chase Hansen. Linebacker depth is also needed right now. I'm a little concerned just because DeMario isn't getting any younger. He's been pretty solid injury wise. Like, he's not really gonna miss games, but you never know. Anything can happen in this league. Pete's been dealing with injuries, and I feel like that little groin injury he's gonna have is gonna nag him for the rest of the season. So Chase Hansen, he did really good in the times that he played, and I think that gives me some confidence at the linebacker position for sure.
Y'all all said great players, and I mean, I gotta just agree with both of y'all. I mean, especially the Justin Evans one. I mean, when we signed him, I was just kind of questioning him. Like, he's been hurt for most of his career, but when he was in Tampa, he was a starter, and people forget how good he was when he was starting for Tampa. So that could be your third safety out. I mean, I consider CD a slot corner more than a safety. So I think that's actually great. I mean, Kirk Merritt just absolutely surprised me. I mean, when I watched him in practice, when he was actually practicing at running back for the first time, first thing I said, I'm like, wow, he's going to be like Cordell Patterson or Deebo Samuel. It's just great to see. So the next thing I have to ask Calvin, you as a defensive player, me as a defensive player, we've seen this, we've worked in this. In preseason, do you kind of, let's say, kind of overreact to the way the offense actually looks when the defense is actually playing a vanilla defense, not really doing anything, just playing base cover 3 the whole game? Do you want to overreact to how the offense actually performed, or do you just want to just give credit no matter what, if that makes sense?
I'm not going to overreact, because there's a word called execution. Doesn't really matter what defense you're playing, doesn't matter who's out there. The thing that you want to do is execute. You can run the most vanilla cover 3, cover 2, whatever you want to play, and if you can't execute it, it doesn't matter. You can run the most complex defense. If you can't execute, it doesn't matter. So these guys, they got a simple defense, and they ran it perfectly. I mean, you can't be mad about that. Offensive side of the ball, they gave you simple concepts. You ran it. You executed. That's how you win games. So I'm just going to give credit where credit is due. Everybody did fantastic. Everybody did their job. Everyone did their 1 of 11. And you see how successful that was. So I think that's a nice indicator for the season where everybody can just execute on the simple tasks that they're given.
No, what? I can actually agree with it because usually I'm just like, no, what? It's a vanilla defense. You can't really make too much of it, but I gotta say, throughout the whole preseason, Andy Dalton looked good. Jameis looked good this past preseason game against the Chargers. I gotta say that. But one thing that concerns me is the Michael Thomas injury again, because we've barely seen him in camp at all. And I want to ask Bob, does that kind of raise concerns for Michael Thomas? Ready to start the season against the Falcons? Do you think that kind of concerns you at all?
Anytime a receiver has a hamstring injury, it's concerning. Because like Calvin said about Pete Warner and that groin, a hamstring is an injury, and I hate this term, but at the so-called skilled positions, that's something that can hamper you and have you, in 1 week and out 2 all year long. So I didn't expect we'd see a whole lot of Michael Thomas in the preseason games. He looked good in the training camp practices before he did tweak that hammy. So I'm all for giving that man as much rest as you can give him. But at this point, I'd say, and obviously we're still 2 weeks out from the Falcons game on September 11th. And Thomas has already been basically out for about a week and a half. The odds are pretty good, but until Dennis Allen tells us on Friday or Saturday that Michael Thomas is going to be a game day active, I'm going to be nervous. I mean, this is a man who's missed 30 out of the last 35 games or something ridiculous like that. I think ultimately once he's 100%, he'll be fine. And back to the monster that we're used to seeing. But until then, like I said, a hamstring for any wide receiver, running back, or cornerback scares the bejesus out of me.
Anytime you can have Michael Thomas on the field, that increases your offense by at least 10. He's just an absolute monster of a receiver. He's like Marcus Colston times 100.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could paint a picture for the folks at home. But Calvin, with the recent cut to Abram Smith, do you like the way this running back room looks with, of course, Kamara, Ingram, Tony Jones Jr., and let's say Dwayne Washington makes the cut? Are you comfortable with that running back room? Should Kamara, say, get suspended in the middle or towards the end of the year after all this legal stuff is done with?
Of course. I trust the Saints front office. The Saints have always had fantastic running backs. We mentioned last podcast, we had Tavares Cadet, we had Chris Ivory. Like all those guys were in one room and they all went off to go start in other places. Tim Hightower, he started before he came here. So we've always had great, third, fourth string, maybe even fifth string running backs. So I'm fine with where we're at. Of course, just the guy I am, I'm always looking for improvement somewhere. So, I mean, in a perfect world, hey, Kareem Hunt wanted to trade out of there. Hey, and if everything falls in line and it's not too expensive, hey, go ahead and get him. I mean, those Alvin Kamara and Kareem Hunt went toe-to-toe each other for that Offensive Rookie of the Year spot in 2017. So, I think that would be pretty interesting. But Mark Ingram, he's going to hold it down. He's always held it down. He was my guy for years when we drafted him. Dwayne Washington, he's gotten snaps in this league. He's going to hold it down. Tony Jones, it looks like he improved from last year because he's a little disappointing last year, but it seems like he's back to where he's supposed to be. I just think that really just goes to the fact that he's healthy this year. For the most part, I'm completely fine with this running back class.
Now, Bob, what is one position that you think the Saints just have to improve and trade for to get better at right now? What's just one position you'd have?
Offensive line is the obvious answer. And all three of us already touched on that. Listen, I know a lot of people are concerned about the linebacker position. I'm not. I mean, obviously the team needs Pete Warner back healthy. They need Demario Davis to stay healthy. But I love the signing of Eric Wilson early in the offseason. I was tooting his horn quite a bit. And the pickup of John Bostic, if he's fully recovered from that pectoral injury that knocked him out of last year, they got themselves, two bona fide starting caliber linebackers in Wilson and Bostic, guys that can play on passing downs and do the things that Dennis Allen asks of his linebackers, which is pretty much everything. Sideline to sideline coverage duties, all that stuff. So I'm not nearly as concerned about linebacker as some. Tell you the position that concerns me: defensive tackle. Onyemata is a beast. There's no doubt about it. Shai Tuttle is one whale of a run stuffer. I like the offseason signing of Kentavious Street, but we didn't see a whole lot of penetration and disruption from him in the preseason. I don't put a whole lot of stock into that, but I'm kind of hedging my bets until we do see it in the regular season. Defensive tackle is a spot. As well as this defense played last year, they didn't get a whole lot of production from that interior defense. And as a result, later in this latter half of the season, we saw players like Peyton Turner early in the year, Marcus Davenport Tanoh passing later on, move inside on obvious passing downs. If they have to do that again, the strategy works as pass rushers, but it leaves you limited in what you can do with with your interior defenders. So those defensive tackles, to me, is a position that has to step up.
I can't argue with that. That's actually on my top 3 concern list. That's this whole offseason. I've reiterated the Calvins, and my top 3 concerns is offensive line, quarterback, and defensive tackle. And right now, 1 and 3 actually concern me more than quarterback. I'm just waiting to see if Jameis can put it all together. And if he has a good season, I'll be absolutely happy to be wrong. So since we're getting towards the end, I got to ask both of y'all this. I'm going to go with Calvin first. After watching training camp and preseason, Calvin, who's your biggest disappointment? Just give me one disappointment.
Treycoin Smith. I mean, is it really that difficult? Or Ian Book? I mean, I didn't really expect much out of Ian Book, so I'm not going to put him on there. Treycoin, though, for sure. You're talking about a guy who was the 3rd receiver, for about 2-3 years, and always seemed like he never really did much. He would catch a ball, a really fantastic ball at that, and then just disappear. Marquez kind of passed him up last year, and especially when we really needed him last year, he just wasn't there. He wasn't available. The best ability is availability, and it just seems like he's never available for you whenever you need him. And this year, with the wide receiver room being as stacked as it is, he went from being wide receiver 3 to potentially wide receiver 5 or 6. So he's fighting for his life out there. He's fighting for his spot. So I expect to see some type of dog come out of him, and I didn't see that. I mean, he dove for a ball that, albeit was a very badly thrown ball, and dropped it. I mean, hit your hands, and you know what my rule is: if you hit your hands, you better catch it. And then he injures himself in true Treyquan fashion. It still ended up being a complete pass, but he didn't catch it. So I think Treyquan has overstayed his welcome just slightly. He's been here for too long, still doing the same things. I just haven't seen too much improvement out of him.
I gotta say that's my biggest disappointment as well. But I'm gonna go to Bob and ask him the same question. After watching the entire offseason, training camp, and preseason games, your number 1 biggest disappointment?
First of all, I'm not going to echo you guys. I'm going to go with a different answer. But if you follow me, you know how I feel about Treycoin Smith, and I'm just going to zip my lip. My biggest disappointment is going to surprise you guys a little bit. Is Tanoh Kpassagnon. He was among the Saints' leaders in pressures and sacks before injury knocked him out of the last half of the year. And we're not talking about a perennial all-pro here, all-pro or anything here, but I was surprised. I think it's very noteworthy, especially in the last 2 preseason games. Tanoh was playing well into the 4th quarter, and it was Taco Charlton getting the meaningful snaps against the what ones played on the other team and the 2s. So that makes me wonder if Kpassagnon, and I don't think he is. I think he makes the roster, but it would not shock me if he was a roster cut because they wanted to keep Charlton. Tanoh Kpassagnon will give you much more versatility. As we said before, you could play inside or outside. And I think he's a much better run defender than Taco Charlton, but pass rushers are at such a premium. Tanoh had a chance to step up and really make a mark against 3s and 4s this preseason, and he really hasn't done it for me.
Well, I can't argue with that. Wow, just thinking about it, he just did not really make too much noise this preseason as much as you would think he would have. But one disappointment I have is Mickey Loomis for not signing Cole Kelly. Y'all all know how I feel. Why is Cole Kelly not on the Saints team and Ian Book is? Is he not? I mean, come on.
All right. Yeah, we're a good team when we're out here being mad about third string quarterback.
Hey,
Right.
I like to see my Southeastern boys on the Saints eventually, man. But we are towards the end of the show. We are at the very end of the show. And I just want to thank Bob so much for stopping by and being a guest. Thank you for being on here, Bob.
Logan, Calvin, it's my pleasure. It's an honor to even be asked. I love the show. I love the show. So it's a privilege joining you guys.
It's a privilege having you on. And with that being said, I am Logan Graffia. He is Kevin Rhines.
Hold on. We gotta ask the guests what the season prediction is for the record, man.
Oh,
do that. Come on now, you forgetting it.
Oh, I'm sorry. CTE pops up sometimes. Bob, before I let you go, actually, what is your season record prediction? Because I have it at 9-8. Calvin's at 10-7. What do you have it at?
Guys, I have the Saints going 12-5. I have them winning the NFC South. I think that if they stay healthy, and obviously Jameis Winston is the huge key, but I think this team is a bona fide Super Bowl contender.
Man,
hey,
all right.
You remember what I said, Logan? I said if everything goes right, we talking 12, 13 games. If you got some injury and stuff, we're looking at 10.
I'm fine with that. I'll be fine to be wrong. I absolutely kind of want to be wrong because, I mean, this is my team. I love them to death. So now, with that being said, I am Logan Graffia. He is Calvin Rhines. He is the great special guest, Bob Rose. Thank y'all for stopping by.